presented by Dano's Seasoning. Yum yum, get you some.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Sunbelt Syndicate from the first kick to the last pitch. And TJ, we are back in the saddle again, my friend.
We are back. Happy to be back, man. A lot of good football action this weekend. Excited to go over it, man. Excited to talk through some of last week, get into some of what we can expect for next week. Football is back, man. I mean, come on. What better place to be? Right here with Sunbelt Syndicate.
Oh, yeah. Back and in full swing. We are here to live it up with all the trash talking, the good, the bad, the ugly. We released at least my power rankings. We're going to release yours live on the show here in just a few minutes. But before we get to all that, just wanted to make a shout out to the people that allow us to bring this to you every week, which is collegefootballdawgs.com. Also, shout out to our sponsors, Dubby Energy, Fanplex Graphics, a new one in TSN Off Road. We'll get to that in just a second. And, of course, Dano's Seasoning. Let me run our banner ads here at the bottom of the show for the people that want those promo codes, and also release the promo code for the TSN Off Road promo for their Labor Day sale. Yes, I said Labor Day, but they extended it mainly for us. So hopefully we can get some people interested. One of the things they're selling, I'll see if I can hold it on the white background here, is it's called a Molly panel made of steel, and it's coated. And Molly panel, for those of you who are off-road enthusiasts, obviously you know. For those of you who are not, you do not have to own an off-road vehicle to put one of these in your car. You can check out their website to where all they can be installed. And you know what? Let's just give the people a little showing of what they can do from the commercial here from.
It's the TSN Off Road Labor Day sale. We're offering 20% off all of our Molly panels, like this one, this one, this one, these ones, and all these.
All right, so that is the TSN Off Road website. I believe we'll have that linked here in just a few minutes. Down below, you'll be able to click and go check that stuff out. It's really good stuff. Again, it's made out of steel, so it's not cheap plasticky stuff. And also, it goes great with football because it goes great with tailgating, because you want to strap things in places within your vehicle to keep them from rolling around, or flashlights or whatever you've got to easily find them with a bungee cord on this Molly panel system. So without further ado, let's get to the first comment of the night. How'd I know?
Yeah, because why not?
What's up, Artie Cat, man? Good to see you showing up again on stream tonight, man. We appreciate you being here. Maybe a little bit better outlook than what he had Sunday night. I was feeling a little down about his Bobcats there.
Yeah, not so great. But listen, that's why we play 12 games.
It's true. Speaking of playing 12 games, we've got through week 1 for everyone. Again, we didn't have anybody go in week 0 for the Sun Belt, so let's take a look at the power rankings here, TJ. Again, mine was released a little bit earlier today. Yours is out now. You actually had some teams stay in the same place. So why don't you go first, maybe explain a little bit, maybe not every team, but explain a little bit why there was some movement on your side of things tonight.
Yeah, so, obviously I guess you can call me a homer, right? I've got App State still at number 1. Raging Cajuns, they're going to stay at number 2 for me. I was, fairly impressed. Coastal, super impressed with what they did over the weekend. Their ability to score emphatically. I mean, it was top notch. JMU impressed me as well. Was a little disappointed in Texas State. So moved them down just a bit. Troy moved them down just a bit. So there's some movement. It was based on performance. I know. Listen, it's one game, right? So it's very, very early in the season in terms of where we're going to place teams and where we think teams might end up. That's just my outlook after week 1. This is going to change drastically throughout the entirety of the season. At least, in my opinion, hopefully 2 through 7, right? We want number 1 to stay number 1, or at least I do. But
I do too.
Yeah, of course you do. But there's going to be some movement, right? I mean, it happens. I mean, teams are, unless we find a team that just goes undefeated, which is rare in our conference, right? Because every week is rivalry week.
Yep.
But yeah, so some movement. There's some things that some teams have got to prove to me. They got to show me a little bit more. Georgia Southern's run defense was absolutely deplorable. So some things that some teams need to work on.
Absolutely. No, that is certainly the case for Georgia Southern's run defense. There was almost no defense played in the South Alabama North Texas game, but South Alabama's offense looked phenomenal. So we'll get to that in just a minute. But I had a lot of movement. And I was telling TJ this before we went live tonight, I'm a fan of a lot of movement in these types of things for one basic reason. The standings will help sort these things out for real, right, TJ? Right. I mean, we're fans. We do this for fun. So since I do it for fun and like to have interactions, I mean, it's, I had App fans very upset that somehow they won but dropped. The guy said 3 spots, but they dropped only 2 spots, first of all. But secondly, it's not so much that I dinged App for not winning by enough or something like that. It's more of the other teams just looked more impressive. That's okay. This is a power rankings. I'm not saying App's not up there, right? They obviously are. They're still right there in mine in third. This is more, the arrows really don't mean they're trending in any certain direction. It just means what the movement was from previous week. Right. So, JMU moves up slightly, mainly because Texas State kind of moved down. It wasn't, again, I'm not going to give a lot of kudos or whatever you want to call it to beating Charlotte. And James Madison fans were a little upset with that, but I'm sorry. There was another James Madison fan who said, yeah, but we beat an American team. Well, yeah, Charlotte's an American team because of their media market. It's not because of their quality of football. Correct. They have never been good since they've been a program. They've had like a win or two. I'm not saying they haven't had some wins, but you're talking about culture and consistency in a Charlotte 49ers football program. It doesn't exist. So you're not going to get rewarded for beating Charlotte like you should have. Just how I didn't reward App for beating an FCS team like they did. I thought it would have looked better. Again, I'm not dinging them, but they do move. So, again, we're not going to go through every single team and why they moved up or down. You can see that for yourself. You can try and figure it out from what we've just explained to you there. But, again, this is something we do to have fun. Again, there'll be a lot of movement as we continue to go through the week. Jacob is commenting saying Coastal wasn't amazing this week. No, I still got Texas State as my playoff G5. And, they could still be there. I think one of the things, too, is like Lamar as an FCS program based in Texas is a very quality opponent still.
Right. Yeah.
And when you go back and look at that game, just not to rehash too much from last week, Texas State jumped out to a very early lead, probably thought they could kind of cruise, got caught off guard, and then had to turn it back on again to win, thanks to Joey Hobart very largely, too. But those things happen. So it's week 1. I mean, these guys – TJ, tell us a little bit from your experience about how tough it is going into a week 1 when you're not in a rhythm and you maybe haven't played with some of the guys that you're literally lining up with.
Yeah.
I mean, what is that experience like for an actual player?
Yeah, it's difficult, right? Because you don't really know who you are yet. I think we talked about this a couple weeks back. No college football team knows who they are until week maybe 2 or 3, right? Like you're going to find instances where you've got to kind of prove yourself, not just to the fans, but also to yourself and to your other, to your other teammates. It's more of what do we have, who are we kind of thing. So it's difficult too. And because part of that is some of the players that you're playing with, like you just said, they aren't necessarily always in the lineup during practice or during preseason. So, maybe holding out for some injuries or some things like that, or maybe just, not your quarterback maybe taking some days off and things of that nature. So you're not always going to be at full strength, and there's not always ones-on-ones when you're playing. So it's It's difficult to find out who you really are until a couple of weeks into the season. And then once you do, that's when you kind of can get a full effect and give the fans what they want. And also, like I said, prove to yourself who you actually are. So it takes some time to get the ball rolling. Some teams put out some great performances. Like I said, Coastal really, really impressed me offensively. Got a little work to do defensively, right? As does everybody.
Right.
Not a whole lot of tackling either in camp, right? So it's different and difficult because, like I said, you gotta figure those things out as you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of figuring things out, let's get to our first player of the week. We only have two. We're not going to do a special teams. I feel like it's almost always going to be a kicker, maybe a returner. But anyways, the conference does their own. We're not going to always go against the conference. That's not the point of what we want to do. But we do want to bring to light some players that should also be highlighted when that is the case. I think that is the case. Not to take anything away from Ethan Vasco, who also had a great game. But TJ and I were talking a little bit before. Probably got awarded that because his team won, right, TJ?
Sure. Yeah. I agree. Listen, it's kind of like the NBA, right? Like MVP is the best player on the best team. It's not necessarily the best person that was in the league, right? So same situation here. I think he was the best player in the conference this week, but his team didn't win. So, it's a big 62 rushing yards, 443 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, he didn't do a lot wrong except not win the game. But you also can't play defense. So, I mean, when you're giving up 1 million points and you're also trying to score 1 million points, it's hard. So, I think just like you, Gio put up a great football game. It's just they were on the opposite end of the stick.
Yeah. This kid's electric. I mean, if you haven't watched him play,
for sure.
He's really fun to watch, guys and girls. If you're tuning in, it's a different speed for him. The game comes to him easier. It's just one of those players. He's just a natural, and it's just whether his receivers sometimes know what he's about to do next, or his linemen know what he's about to do next to provide that block or get that, step or two on the defender to get open and make the catch a little bit easier. But yeah, again, TJ and I kind of agree. It's usually given to a player who's pretty good, obviously, but also on a good team or a winning team. That's not always necessarily who the best player was that week. So this week we have it picked out as Gio Lopez on the offensive side. On the defensive side, I don't think this is much of a surprise. I was actually surprised with who the conference did go with. In fact, I don't want to, skip over his name. So I am going to try and bring that up just to give credit to that. Yeah. Wyatt Williams from ULM also had a great week again, but to me, you're going against Jackson State, an FCS team. You should have won that. You did, and you did play well. However, the stat line from a Mario Thompson from ODU Monarchs against an SEC opponent in their home stadium, to me, was more impressive, and I think to TJ as well.
Yeah, who you play matters, right? And listen, I mean, you're talking an FCS opponent, and listen, I used to play in the FCS. I'm not downing it. I'm not saying that they're not good competition, but you're talking SEC. I mean, that's a class above, right? That is honestly, in my opinion, the class of college football. Now, South Carolina is not the class. No. However, when you're talking about being able to perform well and do it against a conference like, the SEC, this guy, I mean, he 5 solo tackles, 7 total. I mean, it's ridiculous. It really is. 2.5 tackles. It's kind of one of those stat lines that you expect to see from a guy that is, in terms of playing against SEC competition, that's also in the SEC. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, that's the kind of performance that he put up.
Yeah, that's actually the best way that you could have stated it. He looked like he belonged there every week. So, yeah, I mean, TJ pretty much explained everything we need to explain. Congratulations to Gio Lopez and Mario Thompson for earning the Sun Belt winner for Offensive and Defensive Player of the Week thus far. Obviously, just week 1. Now we're going to get into the really fun stuff. The stuff that everybody shows up for which is TJ's clip breakdown. We got some basic ones and some ones I just want TJ to kind of go off and explain some things that maybe us as fans aren't seeing. For those of you unfamiliar with the layout of the show, we try and take at least 3 clips, just depends on what's happening in the week, from each week in Sunbelt play and play them back on the show for you guys to get an actual player who played in the games to explain these things to us a little bit differently. So without further ado, here we go. All right, TJ, I'm going to go full screen here and show the people a clip from technically it was the first game of the week. It was not supposed to be the first game of the week, but Coastal and Jacksonville State got rolling Thursday night before ULM actually kicked off. In this play, we are going to see a running back make a cut and then get some yardage there upfield. TJ, you want to talk to the people about what you see? We'll show it here one time full speed, and I'll slow it down.
Yeah, so, I mean, listen, good old zone read. It was my favorite run play in college football, and it is designed to have a quality running back make a quality play, right? You've got a good offensive line. Essentially what you have happening is you're taking your entire offensive line and you're saying put a body on a body, right? And if a guy wants to run in any direction, you take him whatever direction he wants to run in, right? Now, obviously, flow of football is going to tell the defense kind of which direction they want to go anyway. And now as a running back, you're looking for a cutback lane. He does this perfectly, right? Cuts it back upfield, breaks a couple tackles, a great individual effort. But that was all set up by how well the zone read was blocked up front. I mean, it looks like your center. You've got him taking a defensive tackle, 2 and 3 yards to the left of the formation. So, I mean, guys are doing their job. I mean, they're getting to second level, and it looks like he's not even touched until 5 yards, into the defensive backfield. So, you take a play like that, I'll take that all day long. Zone read, beautiful, beautiful design, beautiful play, excellent blocking, excellent vision by the running back. And you only run zone read when you've got running backs that are able to hit those holes, see those cutback lanes, and get north.
Absolutely. Very nicely done. And clip 2 will come from Boise State and Georgia Southern. In this clip, we're going to see French take off. There is a penalty on the play, and I'll let TJ kind of take it from there and explain what we're seeing and looking at here.
The game of no defense. Well, listen, I wish I could explain what we're about to see. I honestly don't have an explanation for you guys. It was a holding penalty called on number 11. Looks like the H-back or slot back coming out of the backfield. So he gets, I don't know if he slips or gets ridden down, right? And then he pops up and he's trying to block, and then they throw the flag. And I'm like, what are we looking at? Because what I'm seeing is not a hold. He's got him on his upfield shoulder. He's riding him to the sideline. I don't see a holding penalty at all. I know Georgia Southern fans were furious. I was upset. Not really upset, just more confused because I didn't know what I was looking at. And then they said holding on number 11, and I'm looking like, how? He was the one that got ridden into the ground, got up and tried to make a block. Look at him. He's on his upfield shoulder, and he's just riding him.
Yep.
Nothing happened. So I think a miss by the referees in this game cost them on this drive for sure, but certainly one that Georgia Southern would love to have back.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this isn't one I picked out to have TJ or myself diminish the referees. It's a hard game to call, but you do have to look at it and say, I'm not really sure what was going on there with that one. This one is just a fun one to watch. It just breaks away from the defense. I think it's Page here for ODU to get open for the touchdown again. We'll see it first in full time, wide receiver at the bottom of the screen, and then we'll slow it down. You'll probably see better from that all 22 type of look that they'll show after he gets into the end zone here.
Yeah, that's just a silly move. That's insane. I don't even know. Let's take it. Just take another look at it.
Yeah, we'll go one more time in full speed on the move here.
Yeah, that's crazy. He looked like a human joystick. That was NCAA 25 all over again. He stick foot, get into the end zone. I mean, get your hips loose, right? Like get ready to make a tackle, break down, do something, do anything. I mean, touch him. He didn't even look like he touched him. It was excellent route. And then great job making a man miss and using his stick foot. Probably why he got open as well, right? Being able to stick that foot in the ground and get north and really add some wiggle to his game. So that was perfect.
Yeah, here he is at the bottom of the screen. I'm circling with the mouse. Unfortunately, we don't have ESPN type stuff here, so you're getting a mouse instead of a circle with a telestrator here. But we'll run it in half speed so you can see just how he gets open on this play. And TJ, I don't know if you want to talk about these two defenders. Like they both just seemed like they were going to let the other guy get him, right?
Yeah, it looked like a miscommunication. And then once he got even, so the rule is as a receiver, you even, you leave it, right? And once he got even with the defensive back, it was off to the races at that point. You can't expect a guy like him with that kind of speed to stay level with you if you're a defensive back and you're standing flat-footed and not moving backward. I mean, it was, it looked like a lot of confusion. I mean, he kind of just splits the middle of the defense. I mean, he's coming here, and it almost looks like it's supposed to be a pass off, and nobody passes him off. And they both just kind of let him split, and he's just gone. He's off to the races. So I don't really know who to blame because I'm trying to look at the coverage. I can't tell if it's cover 2, cover 3. You've got two safeties kind of within 10 yards of each other, so it's a weird coverage. But he really, at that point, coverage didn't matter because he used the speed and just got by him. Yeah, I mean, it's too late. Right now, it's too late.
Yeah,
it's already. If I'm a quarterback, honestly, that ball, I don't know if you can bring it back. When my receiver got to that 40-yard line, the ball's gone. If I'm the quarterback, it's gone because I can look at the defensive back and I can tell that he's standing flat-footed. And once I see that, I know how fast my receiver is. He's gone. He's out of there.
Yep. Yeah, he was definitely gone. Track speed type thing. All right, we'll see here. Did you want to pause that? Actually, did you want to see what maybe you thought that defensive coverage was?
Yeah, I mean,
it looks like neither one of these guys goes to the guy that's going underneath, so they also look to have that route open.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like kind of like quarters almost, but I don't know, maybe man free. I'm not sure what I'm looking at here.
Okay. Well, I can tell you I'm not sure either.
I don't think anyone's sure because they don't pass it. I mean, honestly, he wouldn't have been wrong going to the bottom of the screen and hitting the flat.
Right. Yeah, he had two great options there. The defense just seemed confused. And one thing that we're not seeing here, but they just had a 3 or 4 yard run play up the gut kind of before this, maybe to help set this up. They went speed and they snapped this next ball pretty quickly. So I don't know if they caught him off guard with going deep to a speedy wide receiver or what. But like I said, or like we both saw, there was actually two wide open options for Wilson to take advantage of there. So he couldn't really be wrong in that regard.
Right.
So, yeah, there's week 1 of TJ's clip breakdowns. I hope people like that. And we did have some comments coming in during that. Yeah. Take a bow, TJ. Jason Milton says, just joining. Did I miss any Georgia Southern coverage? Not really. We haven't really gotten into the upcoming week just yet, but we will be getting to that just here in a second. Thanks, guys. Go Sunbelt. And he says something I can't really make out. I can't read that part. I don't know why.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it means. We'll roll to the next comment.
Oh, man. Chris Bolton says the heat was really getting to the refs. Yeah, it must have been because that one play, it's like I was telling TJ, when you watch the replay, that flag comes into his feet like as the block is.
I don't understand it. Yeah,
so it's almost like
going on.
Yeah, it's almost like he threw the flag and then changed his mind. Like, he tackled him or took him down. And then he's like, oh, well, yeah, he kind of held him. So I guess that's worse. I don't know. Those are the types of situations where, as official from a different sport, I would like to have them be interviewed for that. Not to chastise them, but literally, what did you see?
What were you thinking? Yeah.
That's all I want to know. Like, just explain it. We might be okay with it when you explain it. He had him underneath the cusp of the shoulder pad it was just a split second. I thought it was going to be longer. I'd already thrown the flag. technically by the rule, it's a foul. Okay, then fine. That's what we go with.
I'm not happy about it, but I get it.
Right. Exactly. That's one of those like, well, by the letter of the law, it was a foul. But by how the feel of the game is 2 seconds before he kind of trips him up, makes some contact, takes him to the ground. You didn't call that either. Whatever. But anyway, again, we're not here to harp on those mistakes. We just want to point them out when it seems like we weren't sure what was really going on there. So anyway, that is what that is about. And I want to jump back into our week 2 preview as we jump into each matchup. And I think what we're going to have is TJ and I are going to stay on this Wednesday show. We really like how this runs down. We think we have a better plan going forward for this year. And then we are going to do a Sunday wrap-up show as often as we can because we enjoy doing that with some of the baseball guys. And TJ may occasionally jump on there as well. As long as the Cowboys aren't playing Sunday night football, he may have some interest in jumping on there. So any of you other Cowboy fans out there, TJ's on your side for that.
That is correct. Since 1992.
There you go. So on the front cover of this week, I gave some credit to Joey Hobart. It wasn't quite like player of the week-esque for me, but he made some great plays that had Texas State get back in there and take care of that game that they had against Lamar. So this actually is not from that game. Obviously, for those people that saw that, that's not even the same jersey they were wearing. But a phenomenal catch from last year. He's already replicating a lot of that with some of the stuff he's doing this season. In the first game of this upcoming week, we have Troy traveling to a G5 playoff favorite hopeful in Memphis. This is a 0-1 Troy team going up against a 1-0 Memphis team on Saturday at noon or 11 Central Time if you're over there on that western part of the conference. I think, let me pull my notes back up here. I think Memphis is favored by, unless you see something different live right now, TJ, I have Memphis favored by 18.5 points. So not a small margin.
Minus 18. Yeah, it's 18.5. That's tough. Listen, I don't know if it'll be that big of a margin or that wide of a margin, but I do know that Memphis could run the football. Actually, Memphis could kind of do whatever they want. They're a really good football team, offensively and defensively. They got some hogs up front on that defensive line, and they can sling it, man. I mean, they can, but their bread and butter is running the ball and getting behind those big offensive linemen. Little bit of zone, a little bit of trap, lots of ground game. So excited to see the matchup, but if smart money is on Memphis, and I think Troy's going to kind of feel where Memphis is coming from this week.
Yeah, I think so. The Tigers' one victory is over an FCS North Alabama, 40-0 shutout. So Full credit for taking care of business, doing what they should. Seth Hennigan and Rock Taylor, they're just a scary duo on that side of the ball. They're both veteran players who came back to literally make the college football playoff. I'm sure that was an intended goal of what they want to do, and obviously gauge the interest in the NFL and get that higher before they leave the college ranks. But the Trojans defense fared well against the Nevada passing attack. So we'll have to see how much of a challenge this tandem can offer them. The good for Troy here, TJ, is that Memphis, I don't feel, is as deep in the running back position as they have been. Like you said, we've been a bread and butter running team, and we've seen some of them end up in the NFL, some of their running back core. This year's set, at least in game 1 against North Alabama, again, this is a team that they probably should have run the ball on very easily. They didn't. Now, part of that could certainly be because Seth Hennigan said, hey, I want to get warmed up. I want to throw all over these guys, and we don't need to run the ball much. That could be a factor here that I'm not aware of. But you would also think that they would like to slow the clock, run this game out, just get some reps and move on. If that was the case, it's interesting that the running backs didn't run up more total yards against a North Alabama defense that so far hasn't looked all that great, I would say. They gave up 135 yards to Savion Red last week from Nevada. But Memphis ran for less than 60 total yards versus North Alabama. So there you go. Again, is part of that because that they didn't need to? They wanted Hennigan to get warmed up? Possibly. But Damian Taylor hit the century mark running the ball for the Trojans last week. If he can do that again, I think that bodes well for Troy's chances, obviously, because that means they're controlling a little bit of that tempo, a little bit of that clock. And let's be honest, they're not happy with how last week went. So, interesting to see if they can get back on the horse there, as we know that they have the pedigree to do. Did you want to do like an actual? I didn't write down any score predictions myself, though. I don't know if you wanted to get into that or just.
No, I mean we don't necessarily have to, right? I think. Well, first of all, looking at ESPN, I got the score predictions right in front of me. Some of it I agree with, some of it I don't agree with. I don't think getting into a score is really what people want to hear. I think it's more of why do we think the game's going to go the way it's going to go. I mean, specifically, we're looking at right now Texas State. I don't know that UTSA can stop what they're doing offensively. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And for me, a score is not going to be indicative of how the game goes. So, if I'm looking at Texas State right now, I'm thinking to myself, coming off a great win week 1, where quite frankly, they were able to rush the ball really well and really do a lot of the things that we thought going or finishing the season last year, coming into this year would continue. So small sample size, right? One game. We're not going to, tip our hats to them just yet. But I do think that there is a lot to be happy about if you're a Texas State football fan.
Yeah, and I know that some of them weren't even all that happy with how they beat Lamar, kind of how we heard against some other FCS teams or our teams in the Sun Belt going against other FCS teams. Like, we weren't as impressive as I wanted to be. We could have looked better kind of thing. Those things, again, it's week 1. You already kind of explained that. We won't rehash it. But, yeah, both teams come into this one 1-0, Saturday, 4 p.m. ESPNU. It's kind of cool that Troy-Memphis game gets kind of its, at least in the Sun Belt anyway, it gets its own like slot highlight area on ESPNU, and then this one follows it up. Now the schedule gets a little busier from this point on as far as trying to catch all these games at the same time, but nice that these two kind of marquee games are getting us started there in the Sun Belt action on Saturday. However, UTSA has never lost to Texas State. They are 5-0, the Roadrunners are, against the Texas State Bobcats. But there is good news. The last 2 matchups have only been decided by a total of 10 points. And I believe the one of them was in overtime. It was like 50-48 or something like that. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. But like you said, my point here is agreeing with yours. Can the Roadrunners stop what Ishmael Mahdi, Joey Hobart, and Jordan McLeod can put together on the offensive side of the ball? And that's not all of them. That's just probably your top.
I was going to say, that's just a couple. Top of my head.
They go deep there. So it's really up to the Roadrunners defense to slow them down. But, Lamar did put up some points on this Texas State defense. Ben Bell is obviously a key component to what they do in the linebacker position. He's going to have to kind of be that quarterback out there for the defense and get them up to speed and not have as many mistakes as they had last week against Lamar. Here's a weird stat for you. I did find this interesting. There were 2 fumbles by both of these offenses last week, and they both allowed exactly 51 yards rushing to the opposition.
How about that?
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. I mean, the fumbles thing, that's really just a throw in because it was also the same. That could happen all over the place, right? There's always teams that have that many fumbles. But the exact same amount of rushing yards to each opponent is kind of crazy. So I'm guessing both teams will give up more yards rushing this week, though.
Yeah, to say the least.
Yeah, I don't
want the task of stopping Ishmael Mahdi. That's for sure. Yeah,
have fun with that. That guy, he could literally probably play defense if he wanted to. I mean, it's ridiculous what he's able to do on the football field. All right, the Marshall Thundering Herd and the Virginia Tech Hokies. Which team's coming in 1-0? It's probably Virginia Tech, right? And Marshall maybe lost their first game? Nope. Marshall hammers Stony Brook, as they should. And Virginia Tech gets stunned against Vanderbilt. Stunned. I will say this.
Is it a stunner? Because based on how they looked, Virginia Tech did. Now, listen, no, I don't know that I know any Vanderbilt fans, right? Like, I don't think I have no one's watching us that are Vanderbilt fans. I don't know any.
Right.
But they looked like the better team coming out of the first quarter. Like, they just looked better. Yeah. So I don't know if I was maybe at the beginning of the game I would have said Virginia, but based on the last couple seasons, there's no assuming Virginia Tech is going to win a football game. Like, I don't know that I assumed that in the last. I don't think I've assumed Virginia Tech is going to win a football game in probably 3 seasons
since Michael Vick for me.
Right, exactly. So it's like, am I really surprised? Nah, not really. And I watched a part of that game, and I was like, not impressed by Vanderbilt either.
Right.
It's just one of those things where Virginia Tech's just not good.
Well, so, I will agree with you on that. I thought Virginia Tech was vastly overrated and overthought of coming into the season. Go look at last year's record. Everyone wanted to point to the fact that they ended the season on a 5-game win streak or 6-game win streak, whatever it was. And I said, yeah, but I mean, you've got to look at who they played in the ACC. It wasn't necessarily the top level teams. I mean, they might have had a winner or two here, sure. But also the whole thing, and you know this, TJ, you don't roll over your winning streak from last year to the next year.
No,
and also
you don't get credit for that.
And you definitely don't roll it over with NIL and transfer portal. That's
right.
Totally, completely out the window. You don't even have the same roster.
Right.
So, yeah, I agree with you that, to me, it didn't shock me that Vanderbilt beat them. You're also looking at, the difference between a lower level SEC team and a middle of the pack ACC team, and you're seeing where and why the ACC is thought less of. So there you go. Now, all that being said, that does not mean Marshall's going to waltz in here after a 45-3 drubbing of Stony Brook and take care of business against Virginia Tech in their place, right?
Right. No.
Doesn't compute that way.
It doesn't mean that at all. But what it does mean is that they've got a hell of a chance, right? Like, if I'm Marshall, based on what I saw against Vanderbilt, I'm like, hey, we can go in and we can beat these guys, right? And also, too, if you look back at, I know we just talked about things not carried over from last season, but Virginia Tech and Virginia, respectively, did not have great seasons last year and lost to some G5 teams. So if I'm thinking about, if I'm a coach, if I'm a player, if I'm on that roster, I'm thinking about, well, this is a winnable football game. And what does this do for recruiting in Virginia? Should we win this football game? Right?
Huge. Yeah. Absolutely huge. Yeah. Cause that's a pretty decent market there around that Blacksburg area. Norfolk is a football rich area as well. Speaking of Norfolk, and a guy that's from around, I think he's from Norfolk or just outside. But anyway, Kylan Drones, the quarterback for Virginia Tech, is teaming up with wide receiver Ali Jennings. If that name sounds familiar to you, he used to play for the ODU Monarchs. He was hurt all of last season, but he was the leading receiver for Virginia Tech last week. So somewhat of a familiar foe to Marshall. I'm not quite sure, didn't quite fact check the fact that Marshall may have matched up with ODU when he was on the roster. But it's very possible that they are familiar with Ali Jennings, and certainly the number one wide receiver for Virginia Tech heading into this one. On the Marshall side, we got to focus on that side as well. A.J. Turner got over the century mark last week, and VT gave up over or almost 200 yards on the ground to Vanderbilt.
Insane.
So do we think that Marshall could get going with the run game against Virginia Tech? Absolutely.
I'd venture to say yes.
It's going to be now Marshall used 3 quarterbacks last week. Again, as I covered Sunday, I would assume most people believe Braylon Braxton is the guy going forward. To me, you could say the other guys had maybe a few better looks, but he put up the better statistics overall. And I think a lot of people expected him to be the starter coming into the season. So even though you saw 3 quarterbacks last week, I don't think there's going to be any doubt who's going to be the starter for Marshall against Virginia Tech this coming week. Let's see if I have any other notes to mention here, but I don't think so. The only other thing I had was Marshall forced 4 sacks and 5 tackles for loss against Stony Brook. Again, that's an FCS offensive line, but if they can bring that type of pressure and force Virginia Tech into some bad situations like they were against Vanderbilt last week, that's also going to bode well for the Thundering Herd this Saturday. All right. 0-1 Gardner-Webb goes up against the James Madison Dukes, the Dukes' first home game of the year as they matched up in Charlotte last week with those 49ers. This one's an ESPN Plus game. This one does not get rolling until 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 Central Time. TJ, did you guys go up against Gardner-Webb when you were at App?
Yeah, we played against them twice, I think in 05 and 06 or 06 and 07. I can't remember exactly when it was.
Okay.
I mean, they weren't very great then, and they're quite honestly not very good now. I don't imagine JMU having much of a problem with putting up points against Gardner-Webb. JMU did a really good job last week, in their opening debut. I mean, you're talking about, Barnett, 219 total passing yards, 2 touchdowns. He did throw an interception, but listen, nobody's perfect, right? So, I do think they're going to, and also too, to note 89 rushing yards is huge, right? So there's that part of it. So I think JMU puts up, I don't know, I'm guessing 40 against Gardner-Webb.
Yeah, I could see it. Ben James says, "What's up? What's going on?" Ben James, he's our resident Arkansas State expert. So shout out to him for joining in on this show. So you said Gardner-Webb's not great, and I agree. They're not that great. FCS program. They've had some moments. They've had some seasons that they've put together that have been pretty good. They actually played decently well against App State. I think it was as early as last season, if I remember right. Not a bad start. It was a kind of one of those games where it's more about App not playing quite as well as they could have or should have. But what I will say is the Running Bulldogs may just be better offensively than what Charlotte presented to the Dukes last week.
It might be true.
Yeah, I'm not saying the defense is going to match up with what Charlotte could bring at the talent level there at the FBS level, but we know that Charlotte was dinged up, and even if they weren't, I'm still thinking that this score could be similar to last week, but I actually think that Gardner-Webb may be able to be a little bit more of an offensive threat. Tyler Riddell is their quarterback. He is more of a pocket passer, which, again, I feel like we see a lot of dual threat guys at the FCS level because they're just not as good of a thrower or a passer. I guess thrower is a weird description there, but he can bring it in. I know you watch this game. You can see what a pocket passer at the FCS level with weapons at his side can do when we just watched what Western Carolina did to NC State for about 3 quarters before that game
100%.
turned the corner. And I know a lot of us in this conference also had some interest in that because Grayson McCall was at the helm for the Wolfpack. So this game I don't think would be that close. I think TJ is correct in saying that they should win this game rather easily. But I do think that this is one of those ones where Gardner-Webb probably puts up more points than Charlotte did. So it'll just be interesting to see if that happens because, he could be forced into some bad throws and decisions and JMU picks him apart defensively as well. So we'll see what happens. I think they're warming up. We saw at the end a couple of these teams that struggled against FCS teams still really warmed up. This is going to be JMU's first one because obviously they played an FBS team last week. Mm-hmm. But technically, I think this will look somewhat similar to what a week 1 game would match up with because I think the Dukes are going to try and jump out early and kind of coast if they can. But obviously Gardner-Webb's not going to try and allow that. Dominic Ambrose saying, what's up, fellas? What's up, Dominic? Thanks for joining the show, man. The next matchup here is a really interesting one. We've got East Carolina 1-0 hosting ODU, as we know, 0-1 after that tough loss to South Carolina. This is an ESPN Plus game Saturday at 6 and 5 Central as well. I like this matchup. First of all, this seems like it's just a natural, this should be a conference matchup. ECU just makes sense for this. So I like this. I like the regionality of it. It's 2 to 3 hours maybe from each school. It might be under 3 from one to the other. So I don't know. What are your thoughts going into this one? Anybody you think is going to really jump out, or do you think something surprises? I don't know. What are your thoughts here?
I don't know that there's any surprise. I think it's going to be a hard-fought game. I think ECU is a better football team than they were last year. That's for sure. I think here's the thing. Based on what I saw from ODU last week against South Carolina, I think they're going to give ECU everything they want and probably more. I think defensively they're going to be able to rush the passer. They're going to get in the backfield, create some havoc. We just talked about our player of the week or our player of the week.
Right.
Yeah. But I do think, listen, I think defensively they got a good shot. ECU is favored by 2.5 points. I think that's probably fair. But I'm not betting my money on it. I'm certainly not saying that ECU is going to come out and win this game. So kind of a pick 'em game, but obviously the homer in me wants ODU to win it, but it could go either way.
Yeah. I did not realize it was such a small spread, and I wouldn't have been surprised if it was ODU favored by 2 after their performance.
Right, and that's exactly my point. Yeah,
especially again playing at home. One thing I have here is interesting is ECU faces a team from Norfolk, Virginia, for the second week in a row. This one in Norfolk. Last week they hosted Norfolk State, but just an interesting little tidbit to throw out there. So they got these teams back to back, which I think is kind of interesting. The other question here is, can the quarterbacks hold on to the ball? Last week, Grant Wilson threw 2 interceptions and fumbled 4 times against South Carolina.
Yeah.
The good news there, 4 fumbles. He only lost 2 of them. Either him or one of the teammates, grabbed those other 2.
Is that good news?
Yeah, it's not good news. But
I guess it's better than the alternative, but is it actually good news?
Yeah, and the worst one came right near the end. You could tell he was beating himself up on the sideline. You got to feel bad for the kid. He's trying to make it happen. He was getting pressured in his own end zone. He got out of the end zone, but he still had to turn that ball over. I want to say it was like at the 5 or 7. It was close, and it just allowed South Carolina to score that touchdown to go up and ultimately win that game. But here is some good news for ODU fans, and it's on their side. Jake Garcia threw for 308 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's not the good news. But he also threw 3 interceptions and lost a fumble. So the quarterbacks need to step it up in this game. It's really going to come down to if one of those guys can step it up and control and take over this game, that's who's going to win. That's kind of typical, right? Your quarterback takes over and wins you the game.
Sure.
But I feel like that's really true this week. Whoever cleans it up the most and has the least amount of mistakes probably wins this game. As you said, kind of a toss-up. You got a 2-point spread. You've got the team that's at home. That's the home underdog. I don't know. I'm kind of thinking ODU's got a great shot to take this one at home, especially after how that last week's game ended for them. That's a sour taste. They got to get on the win streak. So I'm thinking One Bell Pod jumping on. Grant Wilson didn't fumble at the end. He handed it off to the USC player.
Fair.
Yeah. It wasn't pretty. And again, you got to feel bad for the kid who's doing everything he can to make that victory happen and put him and his team on the map. And unfortunate for the Monarchs fans. And I was listening to the Monarchs podcast a little bit this morning. They said they had a great time tailgating, as TJ and I had told them and all the Monarch fans to do, because South Carolina does have absolutely fantastic atmosphere for that. So I'm glad at least the tailgate went well, because the ending of the game, obviously not really the way they wanted it to go. All right. 2 winless teams matching up again at 6 o'clock, ESPN Plus. We've now got South Alabama traveling up to Ohio. South Alabama may have been the best offense in the country not to win the game last week, right?
Right. Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Gio Lopez, 432 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. And then you've got Pritchett with 10 receptions, 197 reception yards. Yeah. That's insane to not win a football game. So,
right.
Listen, do I think they're going to be able to do that against Ohio? I don't know. Quite frankly, and just me being honest, I don't really know a lot about Ohio in terms of their ability to get to, rush the passer, and their ability defensively. Can they put up points? Ohio traditionally has been fairly decent at being able to put points up. So,
yes.
So we'll see, right? It'll be a matchup of good offenses, but it'll come down to, in my opinion, who can stop who and who gets the ball last, right?
Could be. Could very well be. Yeah, you mentioned it, so I want to hark on it. The South Alabama offense put up 582 total yards.
Nuts.
Here's the bad news. They gave up 550.
Yeah. So that's my point is right. Who's going to get the ball last?
Right. Yeah. And you have to also ask, North Texas is known for that up-tempo, throw the ball over the field, score as many points as possible type of offense. Ohio is not built the same way. They really are more of a ground attack than an air attack. So this may be, and you're familiar with this type of game, TJ, because a lot of your offenses did this stuff where App State just used to outscore people to win.
Yeah.
Not that the defense was bad, but you just didn't need them to help you as much when you're putting up 40-plus points. That could be the case here. I'm kind of with you. I think Ohio State defensively is going to be better than what North Texas presented last week, so I'm not sure the video game stats continue. It'd be great if they did. I mean, that would be awesome. It'd be
good for the viewing public. I know.
Yeah, you might want to tune into this one if you see a high score by half, because it's not going to simmer down. It's probably just. I was going to say
it's only going to get better or worse depending on what you like.
Right, that's very true. But I mean, we also know that these two conferences match up quite a bit in bowl season, so maybe a prelude to what's to come with the supremacy going into bowl season with South Alabama and Ohio matching up early in the season. We've got Jared Bell jumping in saying go Coastal. I think maybe they might be the next matchup.
Yeah, we get the Coastal next against William and Mary.
Yep. That is correct. So we'll go ahead and jump in that. So we've got Jared on. Maybe he's still on while we talk about his team. Both teams come in 1-0. William and Mary goes to Coastal Carolina. Obviously, we're not going to have a Sunbelt team travel to FCS. What are we? But this is also ESPN Plus game. Again, that night slate, those 6, 7, 8 o'clock starts, that's most of the Sunbelt slate. We have very few noon and earlier kicks. I mean, we have one at noon, we have one at 4, and then everything else is 6 or later. So lots of stuff we'll be jumping around to, or I'll be trying to keep up with live while I'm in Clemson, South Carolina. But anyway, back to this game at hand. What are we thinking here? Who comes out 2-0?
I think you know who comes out 2-0. William and Mary's about to get smacked. Based on what we saw last week, I don't see there being any doubt that Coastal wins. What's the spread I'm looking at? Actually doesn't have it. Spread's not listed here. I got Coastal by at least 21.
Okay.
Yeah, I got them by at least 21. Listen, they put up 55 points last week?
Yep.
That's insane.
55 points for Jacksonville State.
Yeah, in Jacksonville State, you and I agreed going into the season, it was a good football team.
Yes.
Better, in my opinion, than William and Mary.
Yeah, and favored to be a possible deterrent in the Liberty outlook for the Conference USA champions. So I think they get smacked around. I think Coastal, and also side note, I've been at Coastal for a night game. It is awesome. I hate Coastal. I hate everything about them, but the atmosphere is great. I was on the sideline for the App State Coastal game. App State did not come out winners in that game. I think that was 2 years ago. Down in Coastal Carolina, down in Conway, but very, very, very good football game. Yeah, we're gonna have to do that again this year, TJ.
Yeah, listen, that atmosphere. I think it's in November, right? November 7th.
It may be.
Yeah, it's. We were thinking about it's me and my wife's anniversary. That's why we were talking about it. So
that means you won't be going.
Well, no, we did. So we have done football on our anniversary. Watch some football games. So
it is a Thursday night game, though. Be aware of that.
Yeah, well, listen, that's what PTO is for.
Yeah, you make the weekend out of it. There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't disagree that Coastal should and will take this game rather easily in the end. However, I do think it could be a rather tight matchup for the first half, and here's why. The Tribe come in 1-0. They beat the brakes off VMI 41-7 last week. Sure. That's not to say VMI is a good FCS team. They're not. They have hardly ever been. But you do have to make note that they made quick and easy work of the Keydets there, as they're known. They're also ranked number 14 in the FCS poll. Not playoff poll, not yet. But, yeah, number 14. So they're no, also ran FCS team. William and Mary has been a consistent thought
they beat Carolina not a couple. It was probably more. I think it was maybe 10 years ago now. But they've had some pretty notable wins over the past decade.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm not saying it's going to come this week against Coastal Carolina, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little bit of a struggle at the start, as William and Mary really would like to, like you said, once again, put themselves on the map by beating a team that's highly thought of at this point, with Coastal Carolina coming in at 1-0 after a big win against another FBS opponent. And also these teams are really even as far as like how they spread the ball out. If you looked at the stuff from the statistics from last week, rushing and passing, they both have like very similar outputs. It's not run heavy or pass heavy for either team. So very even keeled. It'll be interesting to see if that kind of stays the same or if one of these teams leans more heavily on a certain aspect to attack the other this week. The next matchup, we've got another team TJ's familiar with. The Chattanooga Mocs travel to Atlanta to take on the Georgia State Panthers. The Georgia State team coming off that rather tough loss to Georgia Tech because it probably didn't go quite as they had hoped. Chattanooga coming in 0-1 after getting dismantled by Tennessee.
Taken apart by Tennessee. But listen, are we blaming them? Right? No. I mean, Tennessee is a pretty good football team. I mean, they have been for the last 2 years. Got a couple quarterbacks drafted. I mean, we're not throwing shade, but they were taken apart.
It's true.
This should be a little bit more, I don't want to say even matchup, but better matchup for Chattanooga if you're a Mocs fan. I don't know what Georgia State has to offer in the way of running a lot of offense and quite frankly, stopping them. Defensively, they give up a lot of yards, both, through the air and on the ground. Listen, I mean, I'm obviously going to pick Sunbelt team against an FCS football team, right? However, I'm not sleeping on Chattanooga because I don't know yet. We don't know yet, right? It's a new season, like you talked about just a bit ago. Things don't roll over, right? And with NIL and with transfer portal and those kinds of things, you can have a completely rebuilt roster, right? So we don't know what Chattanooga Mocs we're going to get. But I do know Georgia State has not traditionally been a very good football team, or at least in the past year or two. So we gotta see. And also too, with the shift in coaching last year for Georgia State, a lot of players leaving, new players coming in. There's a lot going on, and they got to kind of get the wheels turning and figure out who they are. So it's a good opportunity for Chattanooga to come in and make a name for themselves against a team that is well established. But I'm not counting on it. Does that make sense?
Yep. No, that makes perfect sense. I think it's a good and a perfect opportunity for Georgia State at the same time. So they started off their year without really a warm-up game, a tune-up game, right? Someone equated a lot of the FCS matchups to preseason NFL games, right? You can kind of get going without too much harm. These guys are a little bit smaller in most cases, maybe not as fast. And I'm sure TJ's like, yeah, whatever, dude, because you guys did the opposite when you guys played most of the FCS. Right. Across the board, those are some of the things that you may see ring a little bit truer. However, again, Georgia State didn't get that type of opponent. They came out the gates with a team that was on the highest of highs with line play on the offensive and defensive side of the ball that had been phenomenal. They ran through FSU's offensive and defensive line over across the pond, and then they came in and continued the same thing against Georgia State. Although, if you look at it, halftime score was only 14-3. Georgia State was all the way down. I think they even
not mad about it.
5. They had to settle for a field goal. So that game at half was just about 14-7 instead of 14-3. You just got to remember some of these things when you go into these other games. You've also got to think that the 6'5" Canadian, who is the signal caller for Georgia State, Christian, and I'm probably going to butcher his last name until I say it more often, so I'll try it because it's French-Canadian, I believe. Christian Vallejo.
I was going to say Vallejo. I was waiting for you because I don't know. It kind of looks Canadian and Creole both at the same time. Vallejo.
Yeah, it does. Well, there you go. You got the French aspect of the Cajun culture down there, and I was going to say. I mean, if he a couple states to the left, he might fit right in. Yeah, absolutely, probably would. But He didn't take over the game, obviously, against Georgia Tech. I don't know if he'll quite take over the game against Chattanooga, but I do think we'll continue to see his chemistry with Dorian Fleming and Talik Williams continue to evolve. He started getting hot with some of those guys in that game, and I think that's going to pick up. I was impressed with him. I didn't really know anything about him coming in. He's a transfer that was once at Penn State. He was once at Pitt. Now he's leading this Georgia State team. Again, like you said, within a completely new roster and a new head coach. So it's going to take some time to gel. They were thrown right into the fire against Georgia Tech last week. Now they get to stay at home, which really was just like a throw across the street to stay home.
I was going to say, yeah. I mean, they lost the parking lot. So
yeah, exactly. But technically they're staying home to host an FCS team where they might start hitting on all cylinders. Maybe not, but the chance is going to be better than starting off your season with a very, very hot Georgia Tech team. So I think Georgia State will be just fine. I think they're going to rebound well in that one. All right. Team that both of us favor greatly so far this season and before they're coming into this season, really. The Raging Cajuns get off to a 1-0 start against Grambling. They are going to travel on the road to Kennesaw State, who is 0-1 after a game against UTSA. So not shocking that they lost that first one.
I was going to say, that's not a terrible loss.
Yeah, here's the kicker. This is the tough part. And we heard this from the Raging Cajun guys when we had them on for the West preview. This will be Kennesaw State's first time ever hosting an FBS team. So a little bit extra going into this one against the Cajuns. Not going to favor the Cajuns in that regard. Not to say they can't be favored in the game. I'm sure they are. Do you have the spread in front of you on this one, TJ, by chance?
Let me take a quick peek. I've got UL 15.5, minus 15.5. So, and I'm kind of consistent with that. I was going to say 14. I don't see them going into Kennesaw State and losing. That's for sure. I know Kennesaw State is happy to host the FCS or FBS team. Listen, you and I are both high on Louisiana, the team that doesn't like to be called Lafayette. You and I are very high on them. I think, you feel the same way I do. They've got athletes across the board, every single position, offensive and defensive line. They're fast. They don't have to recruit really outside of their state if they don't want to. I know they've got some surrounding talent that they try and pull from Alabama and, Mississippi, those areas. They don't have to if they don't need to, or if they don't want to. There's a lot of good talent because outside of LSU, where are you going? Right? I mean, your 5-star recruits are going to go to LSU for sure. Obviously, 4-star recruits, 4.5-star recruits are going to LSU. But your 3.5 stars, or 4-star recruits, I mean, where else in the state are you going if you want to stay home? Right? So,
but the closest option they may have is Houston.
Right. And I'm not going to Houston. If Louisiana is right next door to me, I'm not going to go play at Houston. Respectfully.
Right.
Nothing against Houston. But if I can stay home, I'm going to stay home. That was like when I was recruited in college. Complete side note. Georgia Southern recruited me to come way down. And this was before I knew anything about the SEC coming out of high school. Why am I going to go play for an FCS football team that's 2 states down when I can just go essentially right across the state and stay home? So why would I do that? So that's the mindset. If you're in Louisiana, if you're a kid coming out of high school, stay home if you can.
Yeah. Yeah. The interesting aspect in this is there's nothing about, from what I saw and what I've read, that is going to wow you about Kennesaw State's offense. They're not going to come out, throw all over the place. They're not going to run down your throats. Actually, one of their best running backs of all time is now a WWE superstar, Braun Breaker, who is Big Daddy Papa Pump? It's his son.
Yeah, that's I don't know.
Insane. But I mean, you know who I'm talking about, Big Papa.
No, I know. Yeah, absolutely. I know. But you're gonna miss me with these new wrestlers. I stopped watching when my guys retired. Listen, The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin, those guys, once they got off, I left it alone. Yeah.
Yeah. And Ben's making a point. One other place that some of those guys go for the Louisiana is Tulane. And it's true. Tulane is taken some players here recently, and now we've got Troy's old head coach Summerall over there as well. So another reason why some of these guys that had possibly looked at Louisiana, be looking at Tulane. Tulane's a private school, a little different situation than a public institution. Yeah, Baron Breaker. He is the current international champion. Just a fun guy to watch. Just a side note.
I'll give him a look.
Yeah, not the biggest wrestling fan. I try and keep up with it. I have fun with it because why not? Anyway, that's just a little side tidbit. He used to play at Kennesaw State before making it as a wrestler, which, again, comes as no surprise with the lineage he comes from. But again, Kennesaw State's offense not going to wow you. Their defense is aggressive as hell. So if the Cajuns think they can sit back and rest on their laurels, I don't believe that they'll do that. But if they do take some plays off, they will pay for it against this Owls defense. So this is the thing that if Kennesaw can slow down the game and get some success running the ground and then have their defense hold true, it could get the Cajuns in trouble. I don't foresee that happening. I'm kind of with you in the spread there. About 2 touchdowns, I think, would be fair, especially with how much of a role that the Cajuns look like they were against Grambling. Again, Grambling is not Kennesaw, but I don't know if there's a huge gap there either. So I would definitely favor that and say the Cajuns come in and ruin the party and rain on the parade of having their first ever FBS victory in their home stadium this weekend. All right. Georgia Southern goes on the road to Nevada, who's already 1-1, right? They played in week 0. They now played Troy last week. And now Georgia Southern is going to be reeling from that loss against Boise State, where, again, video game numbers, all kinds of high scores, traveling across the country to take on Nevada. What do you foresee happening in here? Does the defense recover? Does the offense just score as many points? What are we thinking?
Yeah, I think I see a pissed off Georgia Southern because I think I see a Georgia Southern who knows that they missed an opportunity. Listen, do I think Georgia Southern is going to give up 1 million yards rushing again? Probably not, right? And not Nevada, to that other end, is not the type of rushing team that would put up those numbers. So it plays into their favor a little bit. Georgia Southern, I think, offensively is a better football team than Nevada is offensively.
Yep.
That said, it's going to come down to who can kind of stop who, and I think Georgia Southern's going to do a better job. I tell you what, Georgia Southern better do a better job than what they did last week against Boise State. Now, Boise State is a formidable football team, right? Like, they are perennial. Like, they are a very good football team and probably what people would predict to be the class, them in Memphis, of our G5s. That said, Georgia Southern needs to bounce back. I think they will. I think they do it in a big way. I think the spread is Georgia Southern. Actually, wow, the spread is Georgia Southern by 1.
Wow.
Yeah, that's really tight. I didn't think it was going to be that close. But I'm picking Georgia Southern to win it. 1 seems super close. I was going to say maybe a touchdown. But I don't see Nevada being as big of a I know Nevada's not as big of a threat as Boise State was.
Yeah. This one's tough for me. So we saw Nevada go up against SMU in week 1. Now,
sure.
SMU is kind of like Charlotte in the fact that you're saying, oh, they're an American team. Well, they're not a long since established American team. SMU is not a long since established ACC team. They have a lot of G5 players still on their roster as they move up to the power ranks. So, yes, they did formidably well against them, probably and could have even won that game, really, if you really look at it. But they didn't. Then they come all the way across the country and play Troy this past week, win by 2. Troy had the opportunity to tie that game with that 2-point conversion that didn't go their way late. That game was like a mirror image. If you go back and look at the statistics, I mean, it was almost the exact same offense and defenses of each other. It was incredible. So it would have been fitting had it gone to overtime because it seemed like one of those games that should have and did deserve it. With the Georgia Southern team, they have, like you said, got to stop the opposition. I think part of that is slowing the game down. It's going to sound weird because that offense was electric last week against Boise State. I'd like to see them control the clock a little bit more and run the ball a little bit more with Jalen White at the helm. I mean, he's a great running back. We didn't see him as much last week because they felt like they had to keep throwing the ball to keep up with Boise State because they did. But, obviously that can't stay consistent forever. And that's putting a lot on French's shoulders very, very early in the season. Hopefully this bodes well. Also, we've got to talk about Nevada is already playing their 3rd game. This is Georgia Southern's 2nd game of the season. You've got to think they're a little bit fresher healthier coming in. Hopefully that can work to their advantage and they can take down a Mountain West conference team, because right now we're sitting at 0-2 against the Mountain West. And what's going to happen when we've got a Mountain West champ and a Sun Belt champ at the end of the season? What are they going to look at as what makes the difference between these two teams with the exact same records that are both champions? They're going to look at how the conferences did against each other. So, yes, you may hate Georgia Southern. We need them to win this game. we need them to win this game. Yeah. So, Ed said he is joining late, but he wanted to know if he missed Southern Miss. You did not. They come up in 3 more games, 3 more matchups. So we are about to run into them. Former Arkansas State quarterback Ryan Applin is co-offensive coordinator now at Georgia Southern. So a little tidbit there from Ben, as I said, Arkansas State super fan. So he's got a lot of those little tidbits to share with us as we go along here. I think that about covers it though, TJ, right? I mean, I think Georgia Southern has a great chance to win. Don't think it's going to be easy, but I could see them coming out on top. But I just like to see them slow it down and just control the tempo of this game a little bit more.
I agree. I'm with you 100%.
All right, now we've got Ben's team up on the picture here as Arkansas State 1-0, somehow 1-0, right? We'll talk about that in just a second. Goes on the road to face Tulsa up there in Oklahoma, who is also 1-0. This is an ESPN Plus game at 7 p.m. Eastern time, 6 Central. All right, well, did you see the overturned call there, TJ, with the Rucker catch in the end zone?
No, I didn't see it. But I did hear about it, and I haven't saw highlights yet or saw kind of what the turmoil was about. Hoping obviously you can fill me and the rest of our viewers in on exactly kind of your thoughts on what that looked like. But I did certainly hear about it and saw some blogs and it's been on the internet. That's for sure.
Oh, I made a mistake. It's a home game for Arkansas State. I don't know what I did there. Anyway, it is not at Tulsa in Oklahoma. It is in Jonesboro, Arkansas. So I do want to remedy that. Thank you for putting that out, James. I'm seeing that now on the screen. So I do want to say that my condolences or apologies for that, I guess I should say. So the real quick, it's been talked about quite a bit on social media. Basically, as I'm watching the game, and Marv and I talked about this on Sunday, but just to rehash very quickly, it looked live like it was not a catch. I didn't think he even got a foot down in bounds, to be totally honest, at the first look live. Now, they showed it. He obviously had his foot down. 1 foot down in college counts. However, there was a question of whether he had the ball. He definitely didn't have it in his hands. It was kind of like pinned against, here.
Yep.
He goes to the ground. The ball comes loose. The guy immediately says no touchdown. They go to the review. They show it up on the big board. The whole Arkansas State bench goes nuts. They see the foot down with the ball trapped in his arm. Touchdown, right? I don't know what they did in the review process, but they overturned it. To me, I would have said, again, I'm looking at it from an official standpoint. What I've done in the past, I've never had the replay on my vantage point, but I'm still saying I don't see anything that overturns the no catch to a catch.
Yeah.
Because did he have full control and then complete the catch? Right?
You're getting into what I was about to say. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, and this rule, some people thought this was different. So college and pros are different in the 1 foot versus 2 foot. What's not different is that you have to complete the catch on the ground, out of bounds, whatever it is. You have to maintain control of the ball. The ball ends up by his side. I mean, I'm not saying it rolled 5 feet away. It might have been pinned up against his side. He did not. It moved. Okay. So it moved away from him, kind of got away from him. He grabbed it back up. Here's the biggest tell. And I've said this before as an official of, again, sports in general. He got up, never once looked at the official, never signaled touchdown himself. He threw the ball back to the official and started walking back to the line of scrimmage.
Player body language will tell you a lot of what you need to know.
Boom, exactly. And Marv picked that up too as an outside observer. So to me, it wasn't a touchdown. Now, everyone who says they should have lost, 3 seconds were still on the clock, whether that play was ruled a touchdown or incomplete. So they would have had another shot at the end zone. Very easily could have scored on the next play. You never know. And I'll say this, TJ, what would you have rather seen? So let's just put it to a poll here. A or B? A, they come out, make an apology, and make everybody know they made a mistake. B, stick to their guns and said the guy caught the ball and move on.
Oh.
From a conference standpoint, so the Sun Belt released an official statement saying there was an improperly awarded touchdown. Obviously, there's nothing they can do about it. So why the hell would you not just say,
what's
hey,
the point?
bam, he caught the ball.
At that point, at that point, why are you telling? I don't want to hear this, right? Like, what are you telling me this for? So just stick to your guns. Listen, we ruled it a catch. It's a catch, and let's move on.
Yeah.
Period.
I agree. I mean, at that point, you just it is what it is. So Butch Jones said with one more play, they would have went back to the same play, is what Ben is saying there. I've seen some people say they didn't like the fade call route, the fade route called on that play because it's towards the back of the end zone. It's not necessarily a high percentage. It's kind of a heave it up, but you also have Rucker back there who's a very tall wide receiver, a veteran wide receiver. You trust the game in his hands on the line. I didn't dislike the call. It was just like a foot further out than it could have been, Right. So then you're not really having that. Let's go one more time to the TSN Off Road stuff.
Today is a good day because the TSN Off Road Labor Day sale is going on right now. 20% off all bungee board molly panel systems. Flag us down, seize the day. TSN Off Road.
Yeah, and just a quick once over again. This is TSN Off Road, as you can see there. It's called a molly panel. You can hear me knocking on it there. That is a steel piece. It's coated with, I forget what they call this, but it's not going to scratch up, okay? It's nice stuff. Again, you don't need a big SUV or truck to put this in. And there's a lot of people that have installed it underneath their glove box. So when you open up the glove box, you've got all your stuff here, your flashlight, your wallet, if you want to do something like that. For those that have weapons at their disposal, I mean, there's people that want those, easily grabbable. You could do that type of thing. And this is just a very small one, again, just to give you an idea of what we're looking at. So you can get much bigger ones. I've put the link in the description for the show and also in the chats as we go along here. And we will get back to the action. But first, Ben is saying Rucker is the leader of the wide receiver room. Yeah, that's without question. He's probably one of the leaders in the entire Sun Belt Conference in that fact as well. And the replay official was in the SEC headquarters in Birmingham. Yeah, for those that don't know, the SEC and the Sun Belt share officials. So they're grabbing from the same pool of officials. That's made very clear and obvious at media days. They do a whole presentation about that. It was phenomenal for those that have kind of interest in that. The amount of communication that goes on every single play as soon as it's stopped is crazy. I don't know about you, TJ. I can't have somebody like talking in my ear, looking, trying to ascertain what's going on.
Right. Yeah.
Talking about, it's just, I don't know how.
You certainly have got to be trained on that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. So we'll move on to one of the more exciting matchups, I think, that's just not big enough maybe for people to know as much. But we've got UAB 1-0 traveling to Monroe, who's also 1-0 after that victory over Jackson State. ESPN Plus game, again, 7-6 Central kickoff time. This one's got some undertones, but before we get to some of that, TJ, thoughts on the Blazers going up against the Warhawks? Two great names in this one.
Yeah. First of all, Blazers and Warhawks. Yeah, I love it. This is a tough one for me because I'm looking at UAB's quarterback, Zeno. I mean, he didn't wow me last week, right? 215 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. I'm obviously reading my screen here. But on the other side of the ball, I mean, Hardy for ULM averaged almost 5 yards a carry in a touchdown. Yeah. So, and if my running back is going to give me 5 yards a pop, I can control the hell out of the clock. You know what I mean? Like I can. So for me, it's one of those General Booty. I love it.
I love that name.
I just do. I just love it a whole lot. But yeah, so if I can control the clock and work on time of possession, I'm going to do that. Now, it's not a fun way to win. It's not a pretty way to win. But if you're a football purist like you and myself, I don't care how you win. I just want you to win. And I want ULM to win this football game. So based on what we've seen and based on what we know that they can do in week one, again, small sample size, all of these guys, everything that we're talking about is all based on small sample sizes. So don't quote us as saying this team is the way that they are now and they're going to continue to be that way, because we don't know who they are. Week 3, week 4 will tell us who a team is, and we'll get to that as we get to it. But based on what we've seen so far, it tells me that ULM has the ability to control the clock, has the ability to run the football. And if you have that ability and you're going up against a team who is similar, I guess, in kind of style of play, right? Because you're not talking about a quarterback. Zeno is a better quarterback, sure. But you also, and I was just getting ready to get to that, you're not talking about a quarterback who is that much different in terms of being a difference maker in the outcome of the football game, right? So I don't know. Maybe your thoughts might be a little different. I just feel like this is ULM's chance to kind of start the season off, go 2-0, and really take control of their own destiny for the first few weeks of the season. But who knows? If they can run the ball and control the clock, I'd give anybody a shot.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest question. Obviously, we've got head coach Trent Dilfer there for UAB, so an interesting tidbit in that one. But also the other part of that, Brian Vincent, the now head coach at ULM, was the interim at UAB, not giving the full head coach tag. So he gets the head coaching job at ULM. So now he's going up against his former team, former coaches, former players that he's aware of.
Maybe
I think he's going to want this one really, really bad. I think the guy in the locker room in Monroe are going to want this one for him really, really badly. And as I've said before, ULM has, I think, 15 guys from West Monroe or Monroe on their roster this year. They want to start off 2-0 in this new regime. The problem I have with thinking that they can just go out there and do it easily is that General Booty did not take over a game against an FCS opponent in week 1. He just didn't overly impress me. Now, we've kind of said it with some other games, was that part of the game plan? They didn't want him to go out and throw all over the field. They wanted to bring him in slow. They wanted him to develop slowly. They didn't want to force anything. They had Hardy at their disposal, who had a phenomenal game. They jammed him up the middle all friggin' night long, down Jackson State's throat all night long, and it worked. So why go away from it?
Right.
He's probably going to have to go away from some of that this week against UAB. They're going to be a tougher opponent. But, again, there's a lot going into this. I think they're wearing the all-black jerseys, which are freaking fire. I mean, if you haven't seen this thing, they're awesome. I mean, everyone's got a black jersey, it seems like. The Warhawks, to my knowledge, have never had one before. It looks great with what they've got as their color scheme and that awesome new helmet they've got. I think they're going to be pumped up for this one. Again, like you, I hope ULM starts off 2-0. They've had nothing but struggle since they moved up from the FCS ranks many years ago. I'd love for them to kind of turn the corner here. I don't think they're going to be challenging for a Sun Belt championship this year, maybe not even next year. But I'd like to see them build and become some type of named opponent that people look out for and have to be aware of. And Chris Joseph is letting us know 14 coaches on ULM were Blazers on the Blazers staff. So, yeah, wow. It's a lot. Dilfer in his press on Monday said it feels like a divisional game in the NFL. Yeah, there's going to be not just the players on the field. There's going to be a lot of challenges going up against these coaches coaching against each other because of the familiarity. And again, that's why I said this is one of those must-see TV things that I just don't think enough people know the background of why it's a big deal. I think this is one that you're going to want to tune into because it may be low scoring because they know each other so well. But I think it's going to be interesting also because of that. So again, ULM, not necessarily on the map a lot for Sunbelt. I think they may start to be if they can turn some things around here. All right. USM put up a goose egg against Kentucky, 0-1. Southeastern Louisiana coming to visit them, also 0-1. Game ESPN Plus, 7 o'clock kickoff. Tate Rodemaker and the Golden Eagles trying to turn some things around. I don't know if you saw it. Will Hall got chastised greatly across the social media networks, mostly Twitter from what I saw, for referencing the fact that the nicest thing or the biggest thing about going up there to Kentucky was getting that check because we needed to get that check. I don't know what your thoughts are, TJ. You've participated in games where people say you're coming up here to get paid. Is it wrong for a coach to say that? Because what he's alluding to is the fact that pays the bills for so many things at the G5 level. I guess what they said is it makes it sound like that's the only reason to go to the game, and we're gonna go ahead and lose and just take the check. That's the important thing. That's not exactly his phrasing, but that's kind of what people are thinking. So what are your thought processes on that before we get into the game itself?
Yeah, it's one of those things you think it, but you don't say it, right? Like, we all, I mean, listen, anybody who knows football or knows the difference in playing up a conference, they understand, or division, they understand that there's a check involved, right? Like, we knew going to Michigan, we were going to get some money. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of part of it. You don't say it though, right? Because then it just hits the ear wrong as a fan, right? As a fan, I don't want my coach saying, yeah, we're going up there, we're going to go get a check and we'll come home. And, it makes me think that you're not thinking about football. So, yeah, I mean, do I want my coach to say it? No, but is he wrong? No, he's not wrong. I mean, we certainly didn't expect USM to go and beat Kentucky, right? Like, we didn't pick them to win. That said, though, it just hits the ear wrong. You don't say it.
Yeah, and I think what doesn't help is if Will Hall is got a program that's been to a couple bowl games in a row and been winning games, I don't think anyone even draws attention to it. Because like you said, it's something that you think but you don't say. If they're a winning program at the time and he says it, it's like, oh, well, you know what he meant. Come on, guys. Yeah. But when you're not winning,
and when you're trying to get
that not a good look. And you can tell he didn't mean like, we're going to go up there and just take this check and we don't care what happens. But again, like you said, you can't say those types of things.
Yeah, you just don't say it.
Yeah, when things are not going your way, it's not a good idea. And Ed says exactly, we all know it was prostitution, but you don't advertise that.
Fair point.
Yeah. That's another way to say it for sure. But I do think USM is going to get back to their winning ways this weekend. I think that's kind of plain and simple. I don't think this Southeast Louisiana team presents a ton of obstacles for them, I guess, is the word I'm looking for.
They're not a threat.
Yeah, I think Rodemaker is a good quarterback. He faced, and the one thing we should say, Kentucky is a good team. They're not the upper echelon of the SEC.
Right.
But they may have replaced Florida because Florida's not up there anymore, and they continue to beat Florida year in, year out.
Florida looks awful.
Yeah. But, Kentucky's a good team. So I don't think that going up against Kentucky, do you even watch film on that, by the way, TJ? Is that just wash that away? I mean, you only play like 3.5 quarters at the most. I think they called it at some point in the third because of the weather, so they didn't even play 4 quarters.
Yeah, I mean, you always watch film because there's always something that you can take away from a football game, right? You get as much as you can. You get as much information as you can away from games. I mean, you want guys to know that film study matters, and you want them to know where they are, assignment and alignment, right? Even if we didn't win the play, where were we lined up and what were our intentions on that play? So you always want to pull some footage away from every game. Maybe you don't pull as many clips as you would a full game or a game that, I don't want to say matters, but, maybe you don't pull as many clips away, but you certainly want to give some film study to it.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Rodemaker had 2 interceptions against Kentucky. I don't see that performance replicating. I think these guys are going to come out on fire in this one. So I don't have any, real concerns that this is going to be a close matchup. I mean, maybe for a quarter because, it's the start of the game literally. But other than that, I think Golden Eagle fans will be much happier after this weekend. All right. The nightcap, the big one, at least for us. 1-0 App State going up against 0-1 Clemson, but they are ranked, or I think actually this should be updated. They were ranked number 14. I think they dropped further than that, right?
Yeah, I don't know exactly where. Let me take a look. Oh yeah, 25th.
Okay, so they're 25th. So this slide was made like 3 days ago. So I did not update it. So that is not accurate. However, they are still a ranked team, barely. But
in your defense, the rankings come out on Tuesdays. So
I did not get the latest ranking on here, so that's my fault on that one. The ACC Network Saturday night 8 p.m. kick. So the last game of the night. And let me just start off by telling you this. On the way home, I'm driving home. I'm listening to XM radio. What do they call that? Meathead Radio. That's what the nickname is. That's not what the official name of the show is called. But anyway, those guys are talking again about two matchups, two G5s that have the best chance at an upset. You've got Oregon versus Boise State, and you've got App State versus Clemson. Those are only two they talked about.
Yep.
They said which team provides the better chance for an upset. Guess who everybody took? All three.
Of course they took us. I mean, listen. When you talk about the ability for Appalachian State to upset, first of all, it's in our DNA. We've done it. Obviously, we don't want to live in the past. We've had some close games. Penn State was a close game. Tennessee was a close game. We've had some others historically in the past that have been some close games that we've won, right? I mean, Mississippi State, obviously we talked about Michigan. We don't need to rehash that. Carolina, God, our I don't know if you can consider Carolina a top win, but certainly no. I
don't like to give them that much credit, TJ.
Right. That's what exactly. That's where I was going with. But certainly a notable win. That said, though, if you talk about it being in a team's DNA to upset another team, it's App State. It's always going to be Appalachian State because that's just what we've done. That's just traditionally what we've done in the past, and that's what we're known for. Now, you get down to Saturday. Here is the rub. We talk about the differences between a P5, I guess now P4, versus a G5. The difference is always going to be that line of scrimmage. Can you move the line of scrimmage? Can those guys get around, get past, get through? What are we going to do to outduel them in this instance? Now, what I think needs to happen is we need to use our speed to get outside. That said, Clemson is also a fast football team, right? I mean, these are guys raised in the South, right? So, I mean, it is what it is. Are they beatable? Absolutely. Is it going to take a Herculean effort? You bet, 100%. They're not going to roll over. And furthermore, they're going to be pissed off by what they didn't do against Georgia and what they allowed Georgia to do there. Now, they put up a good fight first quarter and halfway through the second quarter against Georgia, but Georgia ultimately ended up just being too much. And quite frankly, Georgia is too much for almost every other football team in the United States of America. So, yeah, you know what I mean? So that said, I mean, they could probably give the Atlanta Falcons a good game. That's not true. I'm just kidding. But
they could give the Panthers a good game, I bet.
That's probably true. That is probably true. No, kidding. Listen,
I'm not.
They are. Georgia is a class alone. They whooped up on Clemson. Clemson's going to be upset. Listen, anything that makes Dabo Swinney upset makes me happy.
Yep.
So I really, really, really want to beat this football team. So I said a lot. I'm going to give the floor to you. But the keys to winning this game, you got to be faster. You got to make sure you don't have turnovers. Mm-hmm. You got to play clock and possession football, and you've got to get out on the edges. And because you're not going to run it at them, right? This don't turn around zone read pistol thing that we do is great against teams that is great against, but it's not going to work against a team that's as stout up front as Clemson is.
That's perfectly said, because that's exactly the point they were making is they didn't lose that game to Georgia because the defense was awful. They lost that game to Georgia because the offense couldn't take the pressure off the defense because they were on the damn field so long. So the defense got tired and worn out, and that's when the big plays for Georgia happened. So this is not a Clemson defense that's any kind of joke or any kind of slouch. They're going to come with it, and they're going to put and apply pressure on App State all night long, and it's not going to be easy for the App State offense. However, one of the points they're making is Aguilar may be the better quarterback than Cape Kublinik, or however you say his name in this one.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't necessarily doubt that either. I mean, let's see. The DJU and Cade are the last two quarterbacks for Clemson. They haven't had the same pedigree as what they've had previously, and even Chase Bryce, who was at Clemson and then transferred to App State. Right? I mean, you've got all kinds of things where and there was an interesting aspect where people were asking him, is he going to go to the game? What colors is he going to wear? He has said he won't be at the game. But I know there was Clemson and App State fans alike that would have liked to have seen him come and just have fun with it because he played for both teams. So that would have been a cool aspect to that. My thing is like you said, too, App State has to be better in the trenches, especially on the offensive line. I think the one downside that I saw watching them live and in person last week was they did not push around FCS defensive line well enough to get their running backs going.
I agree.
Your longest run came from a wide receiver on a jet reverse sweep type of thing for 47 yards. And your running back's longest play was, I think, what did I say, 18?
18 yards, yeah.
That's not good enough if you're going to go in there and expect to beat Clemson. You are going to have to put together bigger plays and provide better protection for your running back. I think the running backs for App State weren't the problem. I think they weren't getting the holes and the blocking up front they needed to be successful against East Tennessee State. Again, like I just said, that will have to change for them to have any chance against Clemson. But yeah, I'm excited to be at this one live. I want to see the entrance, right? I've seen it once before when these two teams matched up, but it was a noon game. It was hotter than hell. They call it Death Valley for a reason. It was loud as hell. I can only imagine what a night game is going to bring into this one. And again, like you said, Clemson's going to want that back from getting beat in that first game against Georgia. They're not going to want to keep that thought process around long for their fan base or themselves. How does the interior defensive line look for App State? So one big thing that we know, unfortunately, from the helmet swinging incident is one of our best defensive linemen was not in the game last week. He will return this week, at least from everything I've seen. It's not being held out any longer. Santana Hopper should be returning back for the App State defense. That will be a big help to them.
Absolutely.
Overall, their defensive line, I think it's pretty strong, but I believe they're still staying in that 3-4 look.
So now they're, based on what I saw, it's kind of a 3-4, but it's a walk down defensive end. So it ends up being like a 4-3 look, right? So it's a standard defensive end type deal. So that extra linebacker is more of a defensive end, but he poses a speed threat than more so than he does a power rush threat. So they put it there so you can kind of run both schemes and you can kind of play with that that defensive line and linebacker scheme and kind of cause some confusion. So we'll see if it works.
Yeah. Now, I know the one thing that Clark keeps hammering on is that he wants speed out there on the defense to make up for some of the deficiencies they may lack in other areas, and putting that, like you said, kind of is that what do they call that position?
I mean, it's a stand-up outside linebacker.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I mean, it's an outside linebacker. It's you've got, Sam, Mike, and Will, to your typical linebacker positions, and then you've kind of got like a rover or like a monster back, if you want to call it that. It just depends on what scheme and what you're calling it. I mean, there's multiple terms for it. It's a stand-up defensive end. That's what it is.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I guess we'll see, but I'm looking forward to that one. Again, like I said, I'm going to be lucky enough to be there. So hope they can take advantage. All right, we'll wrap it up with this kind of another fun little graphic here. So this is, again, not a prediction, not the power rankings. This is what we're calling kind of the weekly outlook, the kind of weather look, not for the game specifically, but what the teams are kind of feeling going into the weekend. And TJ, this is just something I've put together, so you didn't have any input on this. If there's something you change, go ahead and let us know. This is just what I put together to kind of start us off for weeks 1 and 2.
No, I mean, I don't see anything right now that looks like it would change. I think for the most part, you got the teams in the right spot. JMU looked good. Louisiana looked good. Coastal looked great. App State needs some improvement. Obviously a win is a win, and we'll take a win, but we want to win better. But yeah, I think things. I wouldn't change much right here. Maybe Georgia Southern, if they can't get this defense together, maybe next week if they can't get this defense together, then maybe we look at changing them.
Yeah, and I even thought like you could even move like ODU over to the sunny outlook, because that performance. Yeah. Again, you have like 1 or 2 less turnovers from the quarterback position, and you're looking at a very possible win there. So again, this is the outlook. This is how the fan base is kind of feeling. That's kind of how I went with this. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. And honestly, Georgia State may be looking pretty good, but again, so far it just hasn't been enough of a look to say that they are feeling all that much better about their prospects. I think Southern Miss being down there at the back, or the cloudy aspect, is something that makes sense. I know Troy fans are just kind of down. I think realistically they expected to be down just slightly this year. I think that first loss against Nevada surprised them. So I don't know. And South Alabama might not be down too bad. But starting off with that loss to North Texas isn't going to do you any favors. ULM, I just don't think they're ever going to be like really, really elevated, at least like during this season necessarily. Right. But we'll see. If they continue their winning ways, obviously they're going to progress into this outlook where it's less and less cloudy for them. And Marshall could easily jump over there too, especially with a big win against Virginia Tech. So, yeah, I guess that pretty much wraps it up for us, man. I mean, we want to share any last thoughts before week 2 action gets rolling. We don't have anything fun on like Thursday or Friday this week. We got to wait till Saturday for all this to happen.
Yeah, I know. We got to, but listen, here's the thing. I'd rather have it than not have it. So if we got to wait till Saturday, we got to wait till Saturday. So thanks again.
We have an appetizer for the NFL starts Thursday though, right?
Yeah, Thursday and Friday.
Okay. And there's the game in Brazil, right?
Yeah, Friday night.
I don't understand that. Just tell the Brazilians to watch it on TV. That's our sport. Why the hell are we taking it out of the country?
Well, they want to expand the game, and I get it because there's more revenue involved and blah blah blah. I get it. I 100% get it. I'm like, if I'm a player,
right?
I don't know that I want to go to Brazil. I mean, crime rate in Brazil is insane. So I don't know. Also, I mean, crime rate in Chicago is insane. So whatever.
True. Yeah, I want to go on the Brazilian beaches, but I don't want it to be a family vacation.
So
yeah. No, I mean it's for the single guys who don't have any responsibilities with a wife or kids. It's probably like, yeah, I'll go to Brazil to play a football game, but I don't know how much of it is a vacation. So
it's not a vacation, and they would behoove them to stay their asses in their hotel. Yeah. I mean, let's stay put.
Speaking of that, touch on what you sent me the other day. What was the rookie wide receiver for the 49ers? Because that's the kind of thing I think you're telling them to avoid. Like, don't become a target outside of the hotel room, right? Yeah,
I forgot his name. Rookie wide receiver. But he got shot in the chest for a Rolex watch. I mean, and this is here at home. This is in the United States. I mean, this is in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So I mean, is a watch worth shooting somebody over? I guess to somebody, yes. I mean, what are you going to get for it? A couple grand? It's crazy. But one of the most gangster things I've ever seen in my life. Yeah, Persall. Yep. He got shot in the chest, missed vital organs, thank God. Yeah. Went through him out of the back. He walked to the ambulance, laid down, got stitched up, and is going to be on IR for the first 4 weeks and possibly able to play week 5. Are you kidding me? Kidding?
He's like well enough after getting shot like that.
Yeah.
Again, like you said,
literally holding his bandage himself.
Yeah. And he's looking around like,
everybody all right? Y'all good? Yeah.
Yeah. Just insane. I mean, you talk about a badass, man, that put him on a poster because that's what it looks like. Dominic says they aren't letting the teams wear green in Brazil game. I did not know that. Well, what are the Eagles going to do? They have green and everything.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Look at that. Purcell was back in the weight room already, they said.
Yeah, that's nuts. That's insane.
It's like the guys that just get out there and smash themselves in the head with their own helmet until they bleed. Like it's another one of those guys. But he's a wide receiver, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Usually don't see that type of thing out of those prima donnas that played wide out, right, TJ?
Well, depends.
I had to throw a little shade.
Well, I guess if I'm trying to make a roster, you might see it out of me.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, what do you think is his teammates going to just not like do any of the usual rookie stuff to that guy? Be like, don't mess with that dude.
It also helps he was a first round pick, so there's that.
Yeah, it's a good point.
You kind of get away with getting shot and keeping your position if you're a first round pick. Yeah,
it's a good point. I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. He's probably going to have one of the best-selling jerseys once he gets back out there on the
100%, field. 100%.
Yeah.
I would immediately go to sponsor like a self-defense or the other extreme and go like, I don't know, get an NIL deal for Glock or something, or for Smith & Wesson.
Or
you want a gun or for Rolex. I mean, you can take this a lot of different directions. You want a gun that'll finish the job? Anyway, I shouldn't. That's
canceled now, TJ.
That's terrible. Do not quote me on that.
Oh man, I'm clipping it. I'm clipping it out, putting it everywhere. Oh man. Well, no, this was a great time. Thanks for everybody who participated. I think that's going to wrap it up. Anything else from you, TJ, before we get out of here?
Good to go, man. Follow me on Thick Thighs and Large Fries on my social media. Thank you guys for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Hopefully we can get a game this year or a Saturday this year where we can get kids together and film some stuff in the backyard while we're cooking some good stuff up.
Absolutely. There's no doubt we're going to make it happen. It's just a matter of when. So again, thank you for everybody for tuning in or downloading this episode. And we will see you guys on the wrap-up show.